Merhaba, cześć, hi. My name is Özbayoğlu. I'm a climate justice activist, a high school student, a daughter, a sister, a young woman, a friend, and a citizen. I cannot be defined with one word. In fact, no one can be defined with one word. Because, as our Lord said, there is no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives. When I was 15, I went to my first climate strike and became a climate activist. Before, I hadn't been aware of the urgency of this issue. I had heard about the term climate change, but it was a term among other terms that I had to remember from my chemistry or geography class. Nothing special. However, I have always felt a connection towards the people and the planet. My best childhood memories are those with nature and my friends in them. So I just hadn't been made aware of the urgency of the climate crisis. After my first strike, I started educating myself on the topic of climate change and was deeply moved by the data that was being presented to me. No one likes to hear about the highest ever in human history CO2 concentration in our atmosphere, more and more extreme weather events, and irreversible feedback loops that threaten the existence of all life on Earth as we know it today. I felt betrayed and disappointed by politicians who weren't doing enough despite having the most power to change the course of events overnight. I knew that I had to do everything in my power to prevent humanity from the worst consequences of the climate crisis. This led me to becoming a climate activist. But the story doesn't end here. I became a climate activist thinking that climate change is the single biggest threat humanity has ever faced, that we must reduce our emissions, invest in renewables, detach ourselves from an economy based on fossil fuels, and everything will be fine. It turns out I was missing a huge piece of the puzzle. I thought that climate change is the single issue struggle that has a single and simple solution. Later, I was introduced to terms like climate crisis, climate justice, climate injustice, climate reparations, most affected peoples and areas, privilege. My perception of my role in this fight changed dramatically. Then I became a climate justice activist. But I didn't have to risk my life to do this. I was and am in a position of privilege because I can fight for a cause that doesn't impact me on a significant scale, and no one forced me in doing so. According to The Guardian, nearly 98% of the people seriously affected by climate change, 99% of all deaths from weather-related disasters, and 90% of the total economic losses are now borne by low-income countries in the global south. The populations most at risk are Sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, and small island states of the Pacific. The communities that bear the brunt of the climate crisis at the same time are those that are the least responsible to this crisis. The whole African continent, home to a significant percentage of our global population, is only responsible for 3% of our global emissions, whereas the global north, which is home to only 1/6 of our global population, has been responsible for 92% of our excess global carbon dioxide emissions since the Industrial Revolution. Where is justice, I ask? Communities that have been historically and systemically oppressed, that is, Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities, ethnic or religious minorities, people with disabilities, refugees, and women, especially in the global south, fight fighting on the front lines of the climate crisis, despite facing an already harsh reality created by those in power, by the oppressors and the colonizers. They have already faced multiple ends of the world, and yet have to bear with another one. Where is justice, I ask? Indigenous people have been passing on their knowledge of living in harmony with nature, on being one with nature, and having a mindset centered around love and reciprocity, because it was and is obvious to them that in order to survive, we have to collaborate. The whole world used to be indigenous once. This mindset centered around reciprocity, that is, taking no more than what nature can regrow, regenerate, was present in all of us. Then, another mindset became dominant. One that was ignited by white European philosophers, namely Descartes and Francis Bacon. They're mostly known for their achievements in the scientific field, but they are also the fathers of dualism, a simple concept that separated our minds from our bodies and humans from nature, and at the same time placed them in a hierarchy, where our minds and humans are superior to our bodies and nature. This thought became dominant in the elite, because that meant that they could extract and exploit our bodies and nature as much as they liked in order to create profits and reach their goals at the expense of the people and the planet. This thought led to the death of millions of indigenous people due to colonization. This mindset is still leading to the death of indigenous people all over the world who are the guardians of our biodiversity. This mindset created the Industrial Revolution, which was built through the backs and the blood of the enslaved people. This mindset dehumanizes certain people, or as Cesar calls it, thinkifies certain people, in the name of an abstract idea or personal gain. This mindset to this day makes the rich richer and the poor even more poor. Where is justice, I ask? Actions don't come from nowhere. I became an activist because I became aware. I thought and I felt what is at stake. World leaders also act, and their actions are also driven by their thoughts, ideas, feelings, and desires. But they have been rotted by abstract ideas, such as money or fame. They are not present in this world, because if they were, they would see the suffering of the people. They would listen to their shoutings, and they would feel the calling of Mother Earth. I believe that there is a limit to this, that they cannot ignore the millions on the streets, that they cannot ignore the millions that remind them each day that we have a crisis to solve, and it is not a single issue nor an easy one. There has to be a limit as to everything, from our physical and mental to our planetary boundaries. I started as a climate activist, but ended as an activist advocating for a world in which both the people and the planet can thrive without any social or ecological barriers. Because I realized that if we are to genuinely tackle this crisis, we have to do the opposite of what brought us into this crisis. That is, spread love and joy, collaborate, and be as one with nature. We were told that achieving a utopia is an impossible task. But we were only told this. So it doesn't mean that it really has to be this way. A single issue approach won't get us anywhere. Moreover, my multi-issue approach won't direct us towards the path of victory as well. A crisis rooted in a single issue approach that is present in individuals having the same problems can only be solved by a multi-issue approach, an intersectional one, led by those facing different and more pressing struggles. People united will never be defeated. Zjednoczone nigdy nie zostaniemy pokonane. Birleşmiş bir halk asla yenilmez.